All right, welcome to season 2 of the HoopStudy Masterclass. We are in episode 10. We are with Coach Jordan Surenkamp, who is the head coach of the Greensboro Swarm. Coach, what's up with you? How's everything going?
Life is good. Everything's great here in Charlotte. Got a lot of our young guys in town just doing individual work. And next thing you know, it's going to be fall and basketball season again. It doesn't seem like there's much off season anymore. It just seems like it's year round. So excited to be on, really excited to interact with all of you. I did a lot of these during those COVID days where we were all kind of locked down, and it's just been a lot of fun. And I really enjoy this stuff. So feel free, like we've said, ask questions, be engaged, challenge one another, and let's all learn and grow in these next couple hours.
So you said that you're in Charlotte now. All right. And so the first question that I do want to ask you, and we'll talk about this a little bit in more detail, but tell us about your journey and how you got here today when it comes to pouring into the hoop study community. How did that all come about? What made you really, I know you said that you did this when COVID hit us, but what really, how'd you get here today being the head coach of the Greensboro Swarm, and what's got you wanting to pour into this community now?
Yeah, so I played Division III basketball. I'm from Indianapolis, Indiana, small town just southwest of the city. Played Division III basketball at Wabash College in Crawfordsville, Indiana, if anybody's familiar with that. But, had a great 4-year career there, played for a legendary coach. And, being from Indiana, if you can't recite the movie Hoosiers verbatim, they usually try to kick you out of the state. So basketball has always just been a huge part of my life. And it's always just been a piece of me. And so, I did the whole college basketball thing, enjoyed that experience. And then, reality hit, my playing career ended, and I wasn't going to go play professionally anywhere. So the next step was, what do I want to do with my life? And I tried all these different things. I've had different internships. I realized that I took some time away from basketball, and I felt like a piece of me was missing. So that's kind of what got me started. From there, did the typical, I worked basketball camps in the summers. During college, I ended up getting on as a grad assistant at the University of South Alabama in Mobile. Was a grad assistant for 2 years, director of ops for 2 years, and then had the opportunity to go work alongside of one of my close friends and mentors, Ronald Norred, who's currently with the Atlanta Hawks now. He was the head coach of the Long Island Nets within the Brooklyn Nets organization. Went and worked with him. My first chance to really be in the professional world in terms of basketball. And it was just a really eye-opening experience, from the fact that you could wake up and just spend all day, every day looking at basketball and not having to worry about anything else. Seemed like a dream. So I was able to do that for a year. Ironically enough, Ronald took a job here in Charlotte with Coach James Borrego and this staff as one of the top assistants. And there was a video coordinator position open here in Charlotte. So interviewed for that, ended up becoming really close with Coach Borrego, got hired on, was an assistant video coordinator for 1 year. That then transferred into 3 years of being his head video coordinator, and really just building my relationship with him and the staff. And then one day came into the office to watch some film with him in the off season, and he asked me what I would think about being a head coach. And at that point, I had been an ops guy, I'd been a grad assistant, I'd been a video coordinator, and I'd never been even an assistant. And he told me, for my development, my growth, I should really consider trying to be a head coach, and that there was an opportunity that was going to present itself with the Greensboro Swarm. And I jumped on it. It was one of those things. My whole thing has always been jump into the fire, make yourself uncomfortable. That's how you learn. That's how you grow. I did that going from college to the G League, from the G League to the NBA, and then from the NBA going back to being a head coach in the G League. My life has completely changed even in the last 2 to 3 years, just from the experience and everything that I've been taught and learned. And that's where I'm at today. I'm getting ready to start year 3. And couldn't be more excited. I've had the opportunity to learn under great coaches like Coach Borrego and the staff there. Obviously, Coach Clifford is here now, and the staff here, again, just unbelievable basketball minds that are just incredibly good teachers. And I think that's really, really important. And so, that's what's gotten me here today. Obviously, talking about the podcast or the different Zooms that I've done and the hoop study stuff, right? I remember being a D3 former athlete, just trying to get my foot in the door somewhere. And I was the person sending emails out to every single email address I could find, calling and texting every single coach I could know, and all of that, and really just trying to find someone who would be willing to take a chance on me and give me an opportunity. And then from that, someone that's willing to teach me and help me grow and challenge me and value my opinion and thoughts. And so any opportunity that I get to do something like this where I can do that, I can give back, we can promote discussion, go back and forth with different ideas, challenge one another. But then ultimately, if I can help anybody learn at least one thing in the next, hour or so that we're on here, I feel like I'm just trying to do my part in that, because I know how much it meant to me with those people that really taught me and gave me an opportunity and challenged me.
Well, and I really appreciate you giving us that backstory. And I wrote down a couple of facts that I'm going to mention too, as well, because Coach Surenkamp is being a little modest here. So he did receive a top 10% scholarship when he was in school. So as a student athlete, because there's a lot of people out there who, kind of don't believe that student athletes put that student first. So, I mean, that's one huge accomplishment. Again, like you said, you were a GA at South Alabama, which is awesome too, because I think it's a humble route to become a GA, do the ops work, be a video coordinator. We've seen success with those coaches down the road. They always seem to be a little bit more prepared and have a longer coaching career. And you did play, in most of the games. You played in 15 games in your senior season. You had that 5 points per game. And you shot 84% from the free throw line, which I think is highly respectable. 62.5% win percentage, 64.5% in your conference, and 18 plus wins in 3 seasons. Like, that's awesome. And the cool thing about it too, talking about, how you succeeded on the court and then you worked your way into the position. Now you're starting, I know the Hornets organization, it's been kind of low. It hasn't won the games that, they've wanted to win. But even with the Swarm, since you've taken over, the winning percentage is going up every single year, and they're seeing that progress. But, as you said, you jumped in to be a head coach after being a video coordinator. And since you were a player, this is a 2-part question. So my question to you is, when you were a player, when you got to college, who was the first person that busted your ass and you came to realization, like, I'm in college now, like, this is a complete different game from high school? And then the flip side of that, when you became a head coach, who was the first coach that you were like, damn, man, like, I really need to still step my game up. Like, I don't have it there yet.
Yeah. So, it's funny, the first real college experience I got, and this kind of goes back to the relationship piece, was I mentioned, like, in the summers, I would work basketball camps just to make some money on the side and connect with different coaches and stuff. Well, I lived right down the road from Butler University, so I ended up establishing a really strong connection with Brad Stevens when he was at Butler. And they obviously had those back-to-back national championship runs. That's how I got connected with Ronald Norred, and we're really close friends to this day still. So my freshman year, it wasn't even anybody within, like, the Division III ranks. That it was me at summer camp playing pickup with those Butler teams that used to go to those national championships.
They were tough.
And he's still here with us, and he gives me crap. I played against him in high school too. Like, Gordon Hayward was one of those. And just like, and at that point, it wasn't like built Gordon Hayward. It was a little scrawny Gordon Hayward, but he was so talented. And some of those guys, just like the strength and the athleticism on the floor, it was just like unreal. And I just, like, my eyes were open. So, even in Division III, like playing against like the College of Worcester and Wittenberg and some of these like top teams in the country for Division III. Like, I think at least 3 of my 4 years there, we had like 4 or 5 teams in our conference that were all in the D3 top 25. So, like, every night was like a war. And the people that, like, discount Division III or NAIA or JUCO are like, it's real. Like, there are real guys at every single level. And that was very apparent to me very early on. And then coaching, man, I think I would just say my first game as a head coach, we played the Birmingham Squadron, and they were coached by Ryan Pannone, who
Ryan
has
Pannone, what a
coached
great guy at
all
Alabama
over the
now.
world. Yeah, like
Yeah.
he's coached all over the world at some of the highest leagues, right? He's been in the NBA, like he was with the Pelicans, he's with Alabama now, but like
Yep.
that's game one. And I like his schemes, his game planning, like you could just tell his teams were very well coached, they were disciplined, they were organized, and they just like it wasn't even things that they were doing that were like unpredictable. It was like the next layer to coaching is like the rotations. And
Yeah.
we would go big and he would go small, and we just had no answer for it. And that was just like, man, like it's really not just about sitting up here and like drawing stuff on the board. Like you got to have like everything in your arsenal in check every single night. And I think you see it in the G League now. Like some of the coaches that are, getting head coaching jobs in the G League right now are 20, 25-year NBA assistants, like
Yeah.
former college head coaches that are very well known and respected. So, I mean, every single night as a head coach and as a player, like you've got to bring your best and have your A game.
Yeah. And for those of you who don't know Coach Pannone, like that's a big name to drop to lose to in your very first game. Coach Pannone has coached, like Coach Surenkamp said, all over the world, highly intelligent. I used one of his offensive systems when I was a head coach at the high school level, and teams just didn't know what to do with us. And all of that stuff is actually inside of the Coaches and Trainers Academy, where you can go check that out. It's a unique offense, promotes a lot of ball movement and promotes a lot of switching, which is obviously great. So, you mentioned building those relationships along the way. Who are some of the people who have helped you out and helped mentor you and kind of groom you into the person you are today?
Yeah, I'm gonna feel bad saying this because I'm gonna name a lot of really important people in my life, but I'm naturally just gonna leave people out. So I do apologize in advance. But it started with Mac Petty, who is the Hall of Fame head coach at Wabash, who I played for 2 years there. He recruited me there. Just the discipline that he instilled in me from a very early on, like in the D3 world, you are on 6-7 hour bus drives every night when you're playing road games, and you're getting back at 3 a.m. And if you're not in class at 8 a.m., he's calling you and he's trying to figure out why you're not there. So like it's like he instilled that stuff very early on. He stays in touch with me to this day, and he follows my career, and that's something I'll always be grateful for. Moving from there, obviously the Butler connections were obviously strong. Matthew Graves, who was Brad Stevens' assistant at the time during those national championship runs, was the head coach at the University of South Alabama. Coach Graves, Russ Williamson, Brock Morris, Darnell Archie, all of those guys who were on that kind of initial staff that I came in with, just them giving me a chance and just really believing in me and challenging me and asking my opinion. And so, I owe a lot to them. And then you go to Brooklyn and it's the same thing, Trajan Langdon as a GM, Matt Riccardi,
Yeah.
those guys hiring me and believing in me, Ronald Norred being our, head coach, Damian Cotter, who's with the Bulls. I mean, I can just give lists of people, but every single person I've worked for has impacted me in a different way. And I just think that good, bad, whatever, right? Like everything makes you who you are today. And then you get to Charlotte and, Coach Borrego being a video guy himself, for Coach Pop in San Antonio, the way he valued the video room and the way he valued a head video coordinator. I was in his office every day watching film. He was asking my opinions. I was bringing new ideas to the table that he would consider. He's just challenging me to continue finding ways to help the group. And then, going to his house at night and hanging out with his kids and family. Like I felt very close to them. And then Coach Clifford now, we go golfing all the time, and he's such a great teacher and just really values my opinion on a lot of things, asked me to be involved in everything here in Charlotte. So again, top to bottom, I could name people all day: Chad Iskey, Jay Hernandez, Norm Richardson. I mean, I could go for days, but every person that I've ever worked alongside, ever worked for, has had an impact on me. And I think that's the beauty of coaching, is like once you get to a position where you become a decision maker, is you can start taking these little nuances and little pieces from everybody that you know. And then that's when you start to really build your own philosophy. you really build your own philosophy. You start to figure out what you like and don't like from different people. And then you start to really learn who you are as a coach.
Yeah. And I love the fact that you talk about how the best coaches, the ones that who really made an impact on you, they value your thoughts and your opinion, right? While you're working with them. I mean, the fact that the head coach is bringing in a video coordinator and understanding that, they can provide value, right? They can provide another bit of advice that can help them out in the long run. And for those young coaches out there who are a head coach, your assistants, when you go to hire them, and you correct me if you think I'm wrong, coach, but those assistants that you hire, try to take your ego out of it and try to get them to be people who can bring something to the table that you can't. Look at yourself from within and say, man, where am I really lacking? What can I ask somebody else to bring to the table? Because you don't always have to have all the answers.
Yeah. No, that's absolutely right. And I know for a fact I don't have all the answers. And I think the best thing that challenging me did was it allowed me to feel comfortable having a voice. I mean, there was a lot of stuff I brought to the table that he's just like coaches, absolutely not. We're absolutely not doing that. But then they would tell me why, right? And then you learn, and that's how you grow and you continue to challenge yourself. So having that voice. When I hire my assistants, it's one of the first things I tell them is, if you say yes to everything that I bring to the table, I don't want you working for me. Like, I want people who are going to tell me I'm wrong and then tell me why. And then that's how we continue to grow and challenge one another and develop and become better. And you're exactly right. You have to know who you are as a coach, and you've got to put people around you that can help fill the voids in areas that are your weaknesses. Because I mean, there's not one person, even Greg Popovich at this point, everybody has areas that they need to continue to work on and grow and develop, and putting people around you that can help you do that is the ultimate way to get to where you want to go.
And now if, obviously the coaches, calling you in, having those conversations with you, gave you the confidence to, have a voice and share, your thoughts. Was there anything else that you worked on personally just to build up that confidence when going to, a superior and telling them like, hey, I know we're doing this, but I think maybe we should try this? Or was it literally just, the people, your superiors, who are just inviting you in?
No, that's the beauty of being a video coordinator is I watched, I'm talking like 6, 7, 8 hours of film every day, at least. And that's just because you're clipping games, you're doing all of this to like present games to the coaches that can watch it for the scout. You're watching everything. And what I would do is, as I'm sitting here breaking the game down for the coaches, if I saw something I liked, I would just put it in a folder. I saw something else I liked, I put it in a folder, and I would write little notes at the bottom that this is why I liked it, or this really worked against this team. And you just start to become comfortable and you start to understand the nuances of the game and how it works, just because you're watching film all day, every day. And one of some of the best advice I was ever given was from Dutch Gately, who was one of our assistants, and he kind of put me under his wing very early on. He's with the Sacramento Kings now. Just said, always have an opinion, right? But then don't speak unless you're asked to. So everything we talked about in the coaches meetings, I had an opinion on. And there was a lot of times that they asked me, what do you think? And I was able to provide an answer. And then the next layer to that is, if you're going to have an opinion, like, you better have your stuff in line. So like, I'm not going to Coach Borrego and just recommending that we change our pick and roll scheme if I haven't done the analytical research, the film study to prove it, and have stuff on the table that can show him how it's going to help us and why we should change. So like, having an opinion, right? Knowing the correct times to voice them, and then making sure that you have your CYA, right? And just making sure that you have your ducks in a line, and you just take it from there.
And not really. And I, again, this is just me reflecting back on the way that I kind of process things, just understanding that if they do shoot it down, even if you were lucky because a lot of them gave you explanations, right? Like, that's awesome, because then they were teaching you as well. But if they shoot it down, just not taking like a shot to your ego, and just understanding like, hey, it's just not going to work out for this thing right now.
No question. Yeah. I mean, if you have an ego, in this game, especially as a coach, it's just not going to work out very long, or it's not going to work out the way you want it to. Because it's a business that a lot of times can be a thankless business. And I've worked for coaches, and I've been extremely lucky and blessed for people who were, told me how much they appreciated my efforts. But there's a lot of people, and like some of my close friends that work in the business, that if they go through a day and they're not getting yelled at or something, then they know it's a good day. So no ego. And it's just, everybody knows that, like, when you go into the office, and I say this with my staff, like, I want heated conversation in our meetings. Like, I want people to go back and forth at each other and challenge one another and bring evidence to the table on why we should do things. But then when we come to a final decision, whatever that may be in the office, we all walk out of the office and we're all on the same page and we're all speaking one voice. And I think that's really important. And that talks to the ego part, and not having it, and just knowing that regardless of what's recommended, right, everybody's working towards the same goal. And that's to optimize the talent that you have on your roster and to help get players better.
Well, I love that too, because you spoke before we started tonight about working for great people that, you trust, that you want to show up every single day for them. And so you talk about how you want heated conversations, you want passionate conversations, is what I'm assuming that you're talking about there. How do you, especially, with lower levels, college, high school, AAU, things of that nature, do you have any, words of advice for how you can manage those conversations without allowing them to get to a point to where it's becoming, toxic or disrespectful or anything like that? Is there a way that you all kind of come back and just reset it?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good question. I think, to be honest, a lot of it to me is just the transparency up front from me, and explaining how these conversations are going to go and why they're important. The second layer to that, and it's not always the choice of the head coach in some opportunities, but it's hiring people that you feel comfortable in those situations with, and having, like, and being very upfront with them. That's why hiring people that you trust is so important in this business, and people that you respect. And, there's obviously conversations that, you hope that don't get out of control in any of those capacities. You hope that, just being grown men at this point, you can sit in a room and have, productive conversations. But, if those things do happen, it is your job as a head coach to bring things back to the centerpiece, which is, we're having these conversations as a means to improve our roster and improve our team and find ways to win games and develop players. And, if you can't have a staff that is willing to see that this is for the betterment of the guys in the locker room, then it's going to be very hard to be productive in general. So I think that's just the big piece, is just reminding guys of the big picture and why you're doing things, and why it's important.
So you obviously, like you hinted at before, during the summertime, you were at Butler, mixing it up with titans in the industry. Yeah, I know you did, camp for the Pacers, right? For the people who haven't had that opportunity to, just chop it up with a Brad Stevens, or go work camp for the Hornets because they're located in the middle of nowhere, or there's just not a quality program around them.
Yep.
What bit of advice would you give them if they wanted to move up the chain and get involved with, a G League team, or, somehow make their way into the NBA?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing, like, just reaching out to people. Like, basketball, like, the world of basketball is super small in general. So I just think building networks and building genuine relationships and connections is a good place to start. And it doesn't always have to be at a camp. You can reach out to people that know people, or, like, there's really good quality basketball everywhere. It doesn't necessarily have to be at the NBA or the G League level. So it's just finding ways to get involved anywhere, and just finding ways to teach the game and learn the game, and I think that that's an important piece, regardless of where it's at. But I think, genuinely just establishing relationships with people in your area, and people that are willing to help you. Like I said, I sent emails all over the country to college coaches, and some of them won't give you the time of day and call you back, and others will. And you just have to make the most of the ones that are willing to give their time. And I think that's really important. And that's why I, like, when people reach out to me, I always try my best to get back to people, because I know how important it is. And, as you start to build these connections, or you start to meet people in the G League or the NBA, it's the genuine relationships of like the consistency of conversation. So, you have people that reach out to you once every 6 months, and it's every summer when hiring season picks up, right?
Yeah.
I'm not going to hire somebody onto my staff that talks to me twice a year and one of them's asking me if I have a job, right? It's genuinely reaching out to them and, hey, how's your family doing? Like talking about things that aren't basketball. Hey, I see you guys are in town next week. Like, would you mind grabbing coffee one day? And just like putting that types of stuff out there and, making the most of the opportunities and really just showing genuine interest in getting to know people, I think is the best way to do that. And then being consistent with those relationships and making sure that they're coming from a good place and you're genuine and wanting to get to know people and learn about them. And then obviously the basketball stuff comes as well.
Absolutely. So I have two more follow-up questions for you, and then we're going to let you go ahead and get into your presentation for the night. So how do you personally continue to grow as you're progressing through the industry? I mean, you are young, you're still you have a long way to go, but how are you continuing to grow? I know you've watched a lot of film. Is that still a big piece to your personal growth?
Every single night. And like, I'm giddy because the World Cup starts here in like 2 weeks. And like, that's just it. Like my girlfriend absolutely hates me most nights during the season because I'm either watching film on our team or I have NBA League Pass on. And it's every single night. And then, it may just be a TNT game on. And obviously we have access to a lot of different video material at this level. So that helps. But you can sit here and watch TNT and jot down notes and like actually pay attention to like what defensive coverages they're doing and trying to figure out, oh, why are they doing this? Right? Like that stuff's important. I watch film every night on something, whether it's player development, whether it's some type of European concept that I've seen. I mean, I'm watching like zone clips from NAI schools on Synergy some nights. Like there's no level or anything that's out of reach for me in terms of like trying to find ways to improve my knowledge. And I say it all the time. There's some of the best coaches in the world are high school coaches or AAU coaches, or, and just because they don't have an NBA logo on their chest doesn't define how good of a coach you are, And so I just think it's really important to broaden your horizons on what you're watching. And like the summer's a really good time to do that. Obviously with the World Cup being here, that's a great way to do that. I'll pick 5 or 6 different teams and just go through and just watch them consistently. And it's not just like pulling plays that you like that's obviously a piece to it, but it's like, can you think the game at a deeper level? Like what are their concepts? What are their, like, if you watch France for 3 games in the World Cup, could you write out what their philosophy is offensively? Could you figure out what they're trying to do defensively? And then as you watch them, can you see the progression of the team, right? Like thinking the game at that level of, okay, like game 1, they were running this type of stuff offensively, but by game 5, they have like 6 different counters to it, right? So it's like, okay, what made them put these counters in? Like, what are these counters doing? And it's just the different ways that you can watch the game and view the game and think the game. And it challenges yourself to figure out who you are and what you like and don't like. But to me, the film stuff is everything. And, there's always basketball on in some capacity somewhere. So that's probably my biggest thing of advice is just finding ways to watch film, go to a local school. Like if colleges are having workouts, like just find ways to get in touch with other coaches and just like pick each other's brains and challenge each other and watch film. And, there's no real secret to learning and growing. It's just, are you willing to put in the work to get to it?
And how much of that time do you put into, pouring into your athletes outside of like X's and O's and player development? Like how much of that time are you spending? Because I know you mentioned when it comes to reaching out to coaches, asking them, how's your family doing, making it more genuine. How much time, and I know at the G League level, it's more of a business. It's a little bit different than college and high school and middle school and things of that nature. But how much time do you spend pouring into your athletes on a personal level, really getting to know them and help them grow in life and learn, for, how to make it to the NBA and get to where their aspirations may be trying to get them?
Yeah, if you are, and this, I think this includes the off season as well. If you're a head coach or an assistant, or you're in some type of coaching role for any type of team, and you're not doing something every single day to connect with your athletes away from basketball, then you're not doing enough. And that's my biggest thing is you've got to find ways, and it doesn't have to be all of them every single day. It's exhausting, but you've got to pick a guy or two every day and just reach out. And that's something that I try to do. I learned the hard way in year one of being a head coach, and I got thrown into the fire, and I was infatuated being a video guy with X's and O's. And I had every scheme imaginable for year one in Greensboro. Like, we were going to do this, and we were going to do this, and we were going to play like this offensively, and we were going to trap defensively, and we were going to do this, and we're going to play this. And then I get there and I realize after the first year that stuff is fantastic. But if you don't build relationships with players that allow you to coach them to where you can build trust, to where they buy into who you are and what you're about, if you don't build some type of rapport with them that shows that you care about them as people, then it becomes very hard to just throw systems into place. And I think that's the biggest thing that I learned. And he plays for the Texas Legends now, but his name's Norns Odiasi. He played at Texas Tech. And we ended up having him like the middle to end of my first year of being a head coach. And he's just such a profound thinker, like not even just basketball, but just in general. He has a podcast called Mind Bully, which is fantastic if you're a podcast person. But like, he really like helped me. Like, he's a player and he's helping me, the head coach, like understand the importance of like these relationships with guys away from the court. And I took that from year one to year two. And then I went into last year with very little X's and O's, more concept stuff, which we'll talk about. And I spent all of my energy trying to build relationships. And I just had so much more success because I felt like guys were willing to listen. They were willing to buy in more. They saw the bigger picture. And I just think that's really important. I mean, even this week in Charlotte, like we have some of our young guys in town, like every day this week, taking a guy out for lunch. And we sit there, did it today, did it yesterday, going tomorrow night for dinner. Like, and we don't talk about basketball at all. Like, it doesn't come up. We talk about basketball every day when we're in the gym for however long we're there. So I just think getting to know them, you learn how they think, you learn who they are as people, you learn how they respond to certain situations. And when you do that, you become a better coach because it allows you to have a better understanding of who needs what. You can't coach everybody the same way. Some guys you have to put your arm around and do it in private. Other guys you can go at it in front of the group. And the quicker you learn that and the more you build relationships with guys, that's where all of that really comes from.
Yeah. So I'm going to put you on the spot real quick. Now, I lived in Charlotte for some years. What's your go-to spot for lunch?
Angelo Allegri, who played at UNC Greensboro and was at Eastern Washington, he's going to be in camp with us this year in Charlotte, took me to a Nigerian restaurant today. And it was fantastic. It was awesome. I think it was called Lugs. It was absolutely fantastic. But I would say my go-to in Charlotte, there's a spot called Optimus Hall.
Optimus Hall. There you go.
It's got all those like small town, like local restaurants. And that was my spot. There's a spot called Boxcar Betty's.
Yep.
That's like the best chicken sandwich I've ever had in my life.
That's
my go-to.
The best deli in Charlotte for anybody who goes into Charlotte is Rhino. Rhino Market's really good.
Yeah.
The best pizza you'll ever have is, I don't know why this name just went out of my head right now, but that's all right. I'll come back to it. Yeah, we'll talk about that pizza a little bit later because that pizza is gas. I've only had one pizza that stands up to it, and that's out in Paris, France. And Dave Portnoy would be all about this pizza. It's unreal. All right, Coach. So with that being said, we have Jalen Fuller's got a question for you real quick before you jump into your presentation. tonight. He says, what are some of the resources you've looked at that have taken your knowledge of X's and O's and player development to the next level?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good question. So I think the biggest one for me is Second Spectrum. And I don't know if you guys have ever used Second Spectrum or you've heard of it, but that's like the biggest thing that I use on a day-to-day basis. And it's a system that the NBA had put into place. They actually put cameras in every single NBA and G League arena. And it's a analytical data company that basically just takes all of this information and like puts it into like basketball 101 term for coaches. And it's fantastic. And that's probably my biggest thing. It's life-changing. You can find out how many times a player blinks basically on the right wing in every game in the third quarter with 4 minutes to go. It's that detail oriented. Like those areas to me, are really important just because analytics has become such a big aspect of what we do. And it's a good way to prove to people, why we do certain things, and you'll hear me talk about analytics quite a bit. But aside from that, like full transparency, like when I look at resources, like I still call it Twitter, and everybody can make fun of me because I'm old and that's what we do is we stick in the past. But like there's a ton of stuff. And here I am with the promotion of like HoopStudy. We talked about it earlier.
Yeah.
There's nights I'm laying on my couch thinking about, all right, what should we focus on tomorrow for one of our wings for PD? And I'll go to HoopStudy, the Instagram page, and I'll look at some of the DJ Sackman stuff and like things and like, oh man, yeah, that would be a great idea. I can incorporate this way. Or, just the people I follow on Instagram, the people I follow on Twitter that are putting out stuff all the time. Right? Like different actions, different concepts. Like I'll get on and I'll scroll Twitter in the morning and I'll find something I like and I'll just go to like some Twitter to MP4 converter on my laptop.
Yeah.
And I'll copy and paste it and I'll download the MP4 onto my computer and I'll database it. And so like it doesn't like Second Spectrum is obviously an MBA college thing. And I don't know how much it costs for a license, to be honest with you, but like there's resources right in your backyard that you can get for free. And that's what like the beauty of social media is you can find a lot of the stuff that I'm finding on Second Spectrum. There's somebody out there that may have Second Spectrum or have Huddle or have Synergy that's just putting that stuff out in the public. So there's ways to find those same types of resources using social media. And I think that's a great tool that is vastly underrated and something that people may not use enough of.
Let them know, coach. Tell them about the hustle. Tell them about it.
That's the beauty of the video coordinator thing.
That's it. You got to learn how to use it.
Coach wants film from the third league in Germany, and I don't know how to get it. You got to find a way to get it. So
that's it. All the converters online, finding stuff in the back door. Like that's the way to go.
That's right.
All right. So right now we're going to let coach go ahead and get himself organized. Just a reminder, if you are listening to this on our podcast service and you want to see this presentation live and you want to see Coach Surenkamp's presentation talking about NBA terms, concepts, and different strategies, you can find that inside of our Coaches and Trainers Academy online. So, Coach, the floor is yours. We will allow you to pull up that presentation. You can go ahead and share your screen, and we will learn a drastic amount of information from you. I am sure of that.
I certainly hope so. So, again, this to me, everybody see my screen. I told you 2 years away from being a video guy, and sometimes you forget how things work. So, the biggest thing that, I've kind of taken from being in the NBA is the level of conceptual understanding that guys play with at this level. And coming from being in the college world to, even high school, middle school, like whatever level, even overseas, a lot of the times, so much of what you do offensively is based on sets. And I ran our pre-draft program here in Charlotte for 2 years leading up to this past year. So all these picks coming through, all these guys coming through for workouts, and you learn really early on. We challenge these guys to see how they think the game. And one thing that I've found, and I saw it in the G League even in my first year, is helping guys understand not necessarily just like what to do, but like getting them to understand why the game works the way it does and how it works. And that's a big piece to me. So in Greensboro, I took a lot of this from Coach Borrego, Coach Clifford as well. And then you see it if you watch the NBA game in general, you see a lot of this stuff, but it's what we call flow. And flow to me is not set related. It's just moving, ball movement, pace, all of these types of things that you can play. It's almost like a secondary break type deal. But to me, sets are you go to a certain place, you run to a certain place, you do this, and then you do this. And it's all manufactured. Whereas in flow, everything is based on concepts, spacing, principles, and decision making. And if you were to watch a Greensboro Swarm game, I would say 70% of our offensive possessions are in flow. And it's not play calls, it's the randomized aspects of getting to the next action. So that's basically what we're going to cover today, is getting away from the sets and finding the flow. So if you look at the offensive life cycle in any capacity, transition is obviously the key piece to it, right? The jailbreaks, the advantage, the 5-on-4s, the 4-on-3s, those are the areas you want to live in. What we're going to focus on today is the early offense. So you try to break out in transition, right? You don't have a kick ahead layup. There's no 5-on-4. So what is your flow looking like? What is your offense looking like if you can't just kick the ball ahead for an open layup? So we're going to look through that today, the early offense, the spacing of it. The two main spacing areas that you'll see a predominant amount of NBA and G League teams use are the 4-around-1, where your 5 is in the dunker. The dunker is just the spot that is basically outside of the block with your heels on the baseline. And it provides a little bit of rim and paint pressure there. And then what I call the play after the play. So we're going to skip the dead balls. We're going to skip the play call aspect of this. And we're going to dive into how you can use spacing and how you can use reads and concepts to just manufacture offensive possessions. And to me, this is the best style of basketball to play. And I think that's why a lot of NBA teams do it. Is, to me, it's really easy to scout plays. Like when you get to the NBA level, there are so many scouts, so many assistants that are involved in play calling and scouting that you call a play from the sideline and the other bench is telling, their players exactly what you're doing. By playing in flow, you're giving guys the freedom to be creative, and it makes it much more difficult to guard consistently. So that's the area that we're going to, again, study today. The biggest thing, so these are kind of the key aspects to who we are offensively, but it's also a lot of just what flow is about. And it starts with pace. So when I say pace, most people think of like the old school Phoenix Suns with like Steve Nash and Amari Stoudemire, where they're just racing the ball up the floor and taking quick shots. So you're thinking of like the Mike D'Antoni Houston Rockets, right? Where you're just shooting as many threes as possible. When I say pace, I'm talking about maximizing your window of opportunity within an offensive possession. So if you look analytically across the board, the best shots that you can take are at the rim for layups, getting to the free throw line, uncontested corner threes, uncontested above the break threes in the NBA, right? So those are your best options, right? But when you look at it from an analytical standpoint further, there's not a lot of difference between the 3-point shots if it's with 18 left on the shot clock in the NBA or 12. So what you're really doing with pace is by getting into your actions quicker, 20 seconds, 19 seconds on the shot clock, or college, whatever that time may be, right? It's maximizing your window of opportunity of moving the ball, getting to the paint, shrinking the defense, and finding advantages is ultimately what you want to do. So it dictates from spacing. And to me, spacing is the primary piece to all of this. So we call it the fast 5 in Greensboro. So what we tell our guys is on a make or a miss, you have 5 seconds to get to your spots on the other end of the floor. And when I say spots, that could differentiate. It could be 5 out. It could be 4-around-1. All of our perimeter spots are interchangeable. And we can get into more of that later, but usually you're getting the ball to a primary handler. Depending on what your roster looks like and what your team is built like, that can mean the different things. We've had Miles Bridges in the past in Charlotte, and we give him a license to bring the ball up the floor. But getting to our different types of spacing within the first 5 seconds. So that puts a numerical thing onto the flexibility of what this offense does, and it allows us to chart it. That's something that we chart in practice and in games, the percentage of times we can get to spacing quickly. So to me, spacing brings organization, organization brings clarity, clarity brings the execution that you want, and then the execution is ultimately what you get you results. So the next layer to this, you get the pace down, right? You get to your spacing appropriately and in a quick manner to maximize your time in the half court. The next layer to this is the decision-making piece, and it's huge. And it's something that we drill every single day, whether it's slot drives, you're reading shifts, whether you're reading weak side rotations, you name it, we have a drill for it. And it's something that you have to touch every single day. So to me, the reads start with, coverages. It starts with understanding your personnel. All those types of things play into the ultimate decision-making process. When you're at the paint, when you're in the rim, right? Who's around you, all of that. The next layer to the decision-making is the shot selection. I just talked about it. We want to get open shots at the rim. We want shots at the free throw line, right? Getting fouled is an underrated piece. Got to get to the free throw line at a high rate. And then we want uncontested open threes, right? And then the last layer to the decision-making is, and this is where the transparency of being a head coach comes in very early on in your season, is you have to identify roles for guys on the floor and helping them understand what their roles are and what that looks like. And just because you give someone one role at the beginning of the year doesn't mean that it can't transition to something else, right? As we go throughout the year and they get more comfortable within the flow of the offense. So we have handlers, which are our primary guys that are going to bring the ball up the floor. Position, again, the game is positionless at this point now. So Denver, Jokic is a handler to them, right? So defining what a handler is to you could be very different than what the other team defines as a handler, right? The next level to this are what we call action creators. So when they're on the floor, they're doing some type of action creation, whether that's step up pick and rolls, whether that's setting screens off the ball, whether that's cutting, all of that stuff. Their primary job is to create action for handlers. And then ultimately you're going to have some type of guys that are hybrids, right? Can do a little bit of both. So identifying those early on, helping them understand what those roles mean, and then helping develop them to be really comfortable in those roles, and then even expand those roles at times is really important. So once you get the understanding of the flow concept down, right, ultimately what you want to do for your possession is you want to play advantage basketball, right? That's the key to it. Find an advantage, keep the advantage. We talk about it all the time that way, right? We do that through what we call relationships. So we have two-man relationships. We have flash relationships. So basically any type of ball screen between a big and a guard is a two-man relationship. But what we do is we take these relationships and we develop them further than just a five-man setting a ball screen and rolling and a guard coming off of it. We'll do guard-to-guard action. We'll have bigs in certain spots where guards are setting screens. All of these two-man games are relationships that we work on, and you have to build through just repetition and different drilling in your practices. And then ultimately through all of this, and this is kind of the key piece to it, is the freedom and flexibility that you get from it, right? Keeping things simple. Your triggers that we're going to talk about, the things that you do to create action and create advantages, don't have to be these world-breaking ideas or concepts. It's just basic principles that guys understand and can do consistently at a high level. We teach in training camp in Charlotte and training camp in Greensboro. We spend 5-10 minute segments every pre-practice of teaching guys how to properly screen, how to set up guys in pick and rolls. Like, it's stuff that you feel like you may teach and learn in middle school. We're doing it every single day. And that's what makes guys at this level so good, is their ability to do this at a high level over and over and over again. So keeping things simple, but being really good in our technique, and then having randomized purpose. So getting to the next action, keeping the ball moving, putting pressure on the rim and the paint, and just having that creativity. And then from a coaching standpoint, the biggest piece to all of this is embracing the idea of it being ugly early on. When you're a coach, you watch the NBA, you're watching high-level college teams, you're watching the G League, right? It looks really, really good. most possessions, right? Like everybody's organized, there's structure, there's pace. It's not going to look like that early on. It's going to be all over the map. Guys are going to be trying to figure things out. What should I be doing in different places? And I think the drills can help that, but really allowing guys to play. And that's the biggest area, again, that I've learned, or one of the bigger areas that I learned being a head coach is year one, we drilled everything, drilled absolutely everything. And I felt like we were really good in the drills, and then you put them in games and they couldn't function. And that's because it's totally different. You know, the drills give you the technique of it and they give you ideas, right? The play allows you to feel it out. So letting guys play, giving them the idea of embracing ugly early, being supportive, and then being able to go back on film or after a certain length of segment time, being able to stop and teach what you see, I think is really important.
So, Coach, I got a couple of questions for you when it comes to this page. So first and foremost, with the role identification, I know a lot of athletes, maybe their role on a team is different than the role maybe that they want. So as a player development coach, I've always tried to tell my athletes, shine in the role that you have while working for the role that you want, right? So what are some ways that you handle that conversation? If Justin Brandt comes into your program and you tell him like, hey, you need to be an action creator, but he wants to be a handler, how do you handle that conversation?
Well, so one, I'll never identify somebody's role without having proof. So I think that's like, we go back to watching film. I watch film on all of our players. Like even the young guys coming in, I'm watching film in college. I'm pulling their analytical numbers. I'm looking at their stats, right? You want to come in and be a handler, but your assist to turnover ratio is terrible. And I have 5 or 6 different clips that I can show you here of why you can't be. And I'm not going to sit there and tell them that, right? The conversation is going to look a little bit different, but it is something that is not always easy to do. And the 2 biggest things that I always tell guys when it comes to role stuff. So one is having proof, right? I think that's something that Coach Clifford is fantastic at, is if you have an issue or you don't like the way things are going or how you're being used, you can come to him and have that conversation with him, but he's going to have evidence of why he does things the way he does. And I think that's one of the reasons he's such a great coach and guys respect him at such a high level. So the transparency piece is really important. But the 2 main things that I always tell guys, especially in the G League, if you look at the NBA, outside of the top 30 players, the top 40 players in the league, right? Every team has 1 or 2 guys that they're all stars, right? You have your Stephs, your Giannis's, your Brons, your ADs, right? Trae Young, you name it. 90% of the NBA are role players. 90 to 95% of NBA players are role players. And they are really, really good at what they do. And those things that they do are 1 or 2 things. I run to the corner, I shoot open threes, and I defend at a high level. I'm a swing man. I create action. I cut off the ball and I defend. I can handle in pick and rolls. I play make for others. I get the ball where they need to be in their spots, right? So much of the league, it's a role player league. And I think that that's a big piece of them understanding that. The next piece is when you look at it, I think a lot of people define, and especially players, define role as what I can and can't do. And to me, what role is what we need you to do to help the team, right? You may be able to come off of pick and rolls and handle in pick and rolls, but we have 2 other primary handlers that are going to cover that. And your action creation and your ability to slip out of screens and shoot the 3 and drive closeouts and defend is what's going to help take our team to the next level. So like that's the biggest conversation piece. Is it's not necessarily that I don't think you can do it. It's that this is what we need from you in this moment to help our team function. And I think those types of conversations are really important. And, some guys don't figure it out, and it's a struggle. But, and the other piece to it is we've had guys called up in Greensboro for 10-day contracts and with Memphis, with Portland, here in Charlotte. None of the guys that we've ever had called up led our team in scoring. Like NBA teams, especially, they have so many layers of like scouting and like front office work and like planning of like what they want their roster to look like. Like if you do the things you're supposed to do and you embrace your role, you're a good teammate and you're about the right things, they're going to find you. And I think those are just areas that are really important for guys to understand. And I have an open door policy. If you want to come talk to me about these things, I'm gonna have those conversations with you. But I am transparent. So it's gonna be, you may not hear something you want to hear, but it may be something you need to hear.
And so going along with that, with the freedom and the flexibility, because I agree. I think if you can get guys to play in a flow where they're reading and they're reacting to what's going on in the court, manipulating defenses by doing different things. Joel Embiid's one of the best that can do that. How do you teach that to where they can, get out of the college mindset where, no, I told you you need to do this and then go do this and then that. And it's not so robotic and it's more of that freedom. How do you promote that and teach that with your athletes?
Yeah, so we start super simple. Like day one of training camp, we put 4 guys on the floor and we do basic spacing and respacing principles. And it's like elementary school level. The ball is on the right slot and there's 2 guys in the corner and there's a guy on the opposite side. And you're going to drive the ball to the rim. You're going to kick it to the corner and then you're going to respace. And then the guy that catches the ball in the corner is going to swing it to that slot and then they're going to drive it. And it's like elementary level, like spacing principles. And so what I try to do is keep it very, very simple early on and just give them a little bit. And there has to be discipline that comes with it. So you have to have a sense of understanding of what is being asked of you, right? So that's where the role piece comes in. But it's also, right, just the very basic, like, these are the 3 things we're worrying about today. We're worrying about spacing appropriately early on. We're worried about this is where you go once the ball hits the paint and we kick. And we're worried about this one action. And then we'll just play. And so you give them a foundation, you teach it, you do some drill work that explains the technique of what it looks like. And then you throw them into circumstances where they use it. And then once they pick that up, then you add a little bit more. Then you add a little bit more. Then you add a little bit more. And then eventually you get to a point where guys are like, well, last time I ran to the corner and I cut, this time I'm going to try this. And it may look terrible, but you applaud that because now they're starting to think, okay, what if I try this? What if I try this? And it's stuff that you can go back and show on film. It's like, I see what you did there. I really like that you tried this. Maybe do it this way instead. So you're taking the ideas and the creativity that they're bringing to the table now, and you're instructing it to where you're allowing them to feel like they're taking ownership of the offense. And like I said, the simplicity of it is huge. Like I think for the first 3 days of training camp last year, we went 2-a-days. The first 3 days of training camp, we ran 4-round-1 spacing every single possession, and we had 2 triggers. And that's all we did. And we just played out of those 2 triggers for 3 straight days. And we just ended up getting into so many different things. And I was like, man, we had some veteran guys on our roster that have played that way before, and they were helping the young guys come along. And it's like, man, like we've really picked this up fast. Okay, let's add another one. Okay, let's add another one. Okay, now we've kind of got a decent package put together for the 4-round-1 spacing. Now let's look at the 5 out and let's put in something there. And then you got to teach them the difference. And so it's just a lot of randomized playing, but it's also like the initial teaching and the drill stuff that helps them feel a little bit more comfortable.
And so last follow-up question, when and how do you correct those athletes? I know every coach has their own style. The best 2 coaches that resonated with me that I ever saw were Lewis Rowe when he was at James Madison University. I would go watch practice. If he saw something wrong with a player, you wouldn't even know if you weren't actually paying attention that he corrected him. He would walk up to him, just quick chop it up with him in between a possession, and then that would be his correction. Bart Lundy, the other one, Lundy was great. He would come up, talk to you, have a conversation, tell you, explain it to you. If you messed up again, he would explain. He'd ask you, do you have any questions?
Right.
You will understand. And if the athlete said yes, I'm like, all right, cool. So now that we both have an understanding here, when you consciously do it a different way, then you understand why I get upset. Sure. So what's your approach? When and how do you correct your athletes?
Yeah. So again, I think it comes down to building relationships early on and knowing what guys need. So if there's a guy that needs to be put on the spot in front of the entire team to get him going, then I'm going to do that. But a lot of like the teaching aspects of it, like you should have been here for spacing, or that's really not the shot we're looking for right now, or like you probably like these are some different options you probably should have considered, are all just arm around the shoulder. This is what I think types of things. If I see a trend within us playing, that's usually when I stop the entire group. Like if it's something that multiple guys are not getting or picking up, then it's something that we need to stop and we need to walk through as a group. A lot of the individual correction pieces are done individually and to the side, whether, like you said, the arm around, like you don't even really know the teaching is happening. And I think the benefit that I have is I have an incredible coaching staff who I trust and do a fantastic job of teaching the style of play. So I know that there are multiple eyes on every aspect of what we're doing. And I trust that they're also doing the same type of teaching on the side. But one thing that we talk about very early on in our team meetings is we foster and create an atmosphere in our facility of nurturing and learning. So it's some guys, when you play in college, like you said, are afraid to mess up. And we don't play that way in Greensboro. Guys, like we're not just going to go run all over the place and like be careless, right? But we're going to provide an atmosphere where guys feel comfortable making mistakes. Guys feel comfortable asking questions in front of others. Guys feel okay not necessarily understanding, right? And it's on us as coaches to find ways to get them to understand. And that's something that's been great with us. And a lot of that comes from the relationships that you build with players. If a guy feels comfortable with you as the head coach because you guys have went to dinner, you guys know each other, you've been through it, all of this stuff, he's going to be way more willing to stop and ask questions, as opposed to, guys that, may not feel as comfortable with you are not going to put themselves out there as much. So I think establishing the relationships early on is important, but then creating that culture and atmosphere of fostering growth and improvement, and the atmosphere of like nurturing the idea of like what we're trying to be. That's why when we show film, I will always show, if I show a clip or a film segment of areas of improvement, I will always follow it up with 2 clips of them doing it the right way. And I think that's really important. The worst thing you can do, in my personal opinion, as a coach, is just sit there and just hammer guys, hammer, and not give them any type of praise. I think that's the wrong way of going through things. And I think if they see them not doing it right, but then you showing them doing it, I think 1, it gives them belief that they can do it consistently. And 2, it's a confidence builder that ultimately is going to carry through with what you're doing moving forward.
Love it.
So that's the flow stuff in a nutshell. Okay, getting to some of the film of it. Obviously, early transition is the world you want to live in. So this is even before the flow piece, right? So what we want to do offensively is constantly put pressure on makes and misses on the defense, right? Whether that's at the rim, whether that's paint touches that pull in defenses, all of that. So it starts with our outlet passes, right? Deep and quick outlet passes. We try to be free throw line extended, and we always have the closest guy take it out. We're not a 5-man take it out, 4-man take it out. Closest guy takes it out, right? Next piece to this goes with the spacing, consistent running habits, right? We got to find running lanes. You got to run wide, and we don't cross the court. Once you find your running lane, if it's on the left side of the floor, right side of the floor, like you don't cross unless you can get to the baseline and do it. That provides clarity. It provides organization. And then ultimately you want to fill corners and slots. So we try to fill both corners and both slots right away. Sometimes there's circumstances where it may be an open corner where you have 3 on a side. That's a special circumstance that I'll talk about here in a little bit, right? But ultimately those are the spots you want to get to, the slots in the corners. And then your 5-man typically is either going to be in the trail at the top of the key or ahead at the rim and then to the dunker. The next layer to that is having a handler that can organize you. So that can be a primary handler, that can be a big if you feel comfortable with them getting rebounds and bringing it, Jokic types, right? Miles Bridges, PJ Washington, guys like that, and your hybrids. But they have to have some type of organizational quality to where they can think the game in terms of, okay, here's our spacing. What are my options? And then ultimately, if anytime you can kick the ball ahead analytically, it's the most efficient style of offense. So kick aheads and seals at the rim with bigs. So getting to some of this film, right? This is a good example of us getting to these running habits. So the ball is off the rim. You can already see the deep outlet pass along the free throw line. Mark Williams, who's playing in Charlotte now full time, we had him for the first couple of months of our season. Fantastic rim runner. But you can see the kick aheads, the pace, right? Mark running to the rim, and then Kobe Simmons already in the corner. These are our corner running habits we talk about, right? These are the best types of threes you can get in the game. Uncontested kick aheads. Same thing here, right? Closest guy takes it out, made basket. Kobe Simmons, who's one of our primary handlers, outletting to Anthony DeRuggi, who is more of an action creator. We figure it out, right? You get the outlet in a hurry. He throws it right back. We kick the ball ahead, and now we're driving. Right? These are the types of easy possessions. You can get 4, 5, 6 of these a game if you do it appropriately. Right now we get into our spacing. We talk about early seals. Our biggest rule and our biggest thing for Mark Williams' development is if he was at the rim and a small was sealed on him, we told our guards to throw the ball every single time. So Mark Williams did a great job of that, right? And those, again, easy baskets. Simple basketball. There's not much to it. Not a ton of action is needed at this point, right? But so many teams in the NBA and even at the college level made baskets where defenses do. They relax and jog back. Those are the most opportunistic times to put pressure on them going the other way. So again, ball goes in, deep outlet at the free throw line, kick ahead, option ahead of the ball. Okay, now we get to our spacing, right? I'm going to show you the 4-round-1 spacing here in a little bit. But again, our spacing's pretty good here. We've spread the floor. We're in our spots. There's clarity in what we're doing. But Mark Williams, because he ran with pace, had a seal at the rim, right? And again, he doesn't make this shot, but those are the types of shots that we're living with early on against smalls. So again, just very basic concepts of, again, deep outlet passes, right? Running with pace, having clarity and organization, and then finding our way to the paint, right? Just the organization and the spacing allows us to have driving lanes that allow us to get to these paint touches. And you can see what paint touches do. So this is in transition. There's flow, there's pace to it. The defense is having to sprint back. Jalen Crutcher was fantastic for us this year in terms of getting to the paint, but there's 4 guys defensively in the paint because of the threat of him scoring the ball. So something as simple as this casual paint touch sucks 4 in, and now you're getting these kick out threes in the slot. Right? So those are the types of things, again, running wide. These are pretty good running lanes. You can see the space the guys have to play with. You know, Crutch outruns our transition a little bit, which will happen at times with guards, right? So again, the difference between pace being careless and just sprinting and pace being like being organized and having purpose in what we're doing, right? But again, we get to the paint. We do a good job of running to corners because most defenses in transition run to the rim, right? And these are the easy, wide open kick out threes that we're looking for. So these are the early transition clips that you want to live in, right? Deep outlets on makes, kick aheads up the floor. You know, you got swings to the corner, you're finding the paint or you're finding the big at the rim. So those are kind of the early offense ideas that don't take any type of real action at all. It just takes purpose and running and being organized. And that's something that every single day when we do what we call script, that's what we're doing, right? We're throwing the ball off the glass. Somebody's grabbing the ball. A lot of times we'll randomize where guys are at on the floor to make them have to think about where they're at and what they're doing. And the outlet happens and we just run and we go play. And we try to get 6, 8 points a game just off of that, right? So the next layer to this early offense is you try to do this transition break like we just saw. Now we don't have anything. So now what's next? That's where the triggers come into play. So to me, triggers are just secondary action used to create the next advantage. That's all we're looking for is simple plays, simple action within our spacing that can put 2 on the ball, cause some type of confusion, or allow us to get to the paint. Okay. And a lot of these principles are very similar to what the transition one was. If you're not organized, none of this is going to work. So getting organized and finding our spots. So what does that look like for us off of a make or a miss? Is the 5-man ahead of the ball? Is he going to be at the rim? Is the 5-man behind the ball? Is he going to be in the trail, right? When you're bringing the ball up the right side of the floor as a handler, is the corner in front of you filled or is it empty? And then the understanding that there could be, guys in different positions, right? There's nuances where the 5-man could be in the corner randomly, right? We're seeing more of that in the NBA game now. The 2-man could be in the opposite slot, and in the next possession, the 2-man is in the corner, right? Like all of these spots are interchangeable. So getting guys comfortable with just getting to spots and then understanding their options, which is the next part, right? Our spacing with the big ahead or behind, the corner filled versus corner empty, where guys are at on the floor, that type of spacing early on gives us our menu of opportunity. So what we're doing is based on 4-round-1 spacing, the corner is filled, our options are A, B, and C, right? So that's the next layer to this. So understanding the menu and what our triggers can be. And then furthermore from that, KYP, which is know your personnel. So if there's a ball handling guard in the opposite slot, it may trigger you to do this. Whereas if that's a 4-man who's not really a shooter, it may trigger you to do something else. So there's a lot of just having to think the game. And that's what NBA guys and G League guys are able to do at a really high level, is they think the game in like a split instance. Like a lot of this stuff is happening within 4 to 5 seconds of the possession, right? So again, the drilling of it, putting guys in random spots and like letting them just run and figure it out is the best way for them to get comfortable in these situations. So once you have your spacing menu, once you have your personnel understanding, the next just becomes, what are my reads? So on the ball, okay, typically, what do they do in coverage? Are they going to ice it and keep it on the side? Are they going to try to go under drags? Are they going to go chase over the top? Are they going to let you go to the middle? Those are common themes that are going to be scouted. That guys are going to have to understand, okay, if I get to the middle on this drag, right, or quick pick, right, what is my next option? And then you also have to know, if you're not the person with the ball, what are your options? If you're in the weak side wing, when can I cut? Should I cut? If the ball swings to your side of the floor in the slot and I'm an action creator, what kind of options do I have to play out of the corner versus I'm a handler? Do I just come off the DHO? Right. So all of these different things come into play, and it comes down to the decision-making piece, the rim decisions, when you're at the rim, taking good shots or kicking it, the paint decisions. What are you doing when you get there? What are the coverages allowing you to attack? Right. And then the most important piece of all of that is how many teams you see get to the paint and they kick it out for a shot, and then the guy just stands in the paint. Right. You've got to find space, and then you got to attack the space, and then you got to get back to the space. Like those are the biggest areas. You can't just stand in the paint. So all of our guys have rules. You know, we use the free throw line as a barometer. If you drive the ball into the paint and you're below the free throw line, we always empty out to the weak side away from the pass into the corner. So guys know, based on where they make their pass from or where they're at on the floor, what their reads are, what their options are, and how they can respace appropriately.
So one of the things that you mentioned were how quickly the players make decisions at that level. One of my athletes that I work with, he was a longtime college player, highly successful in college, ended up going through the draft. I was asking him how, his summer workouts were going. And immediately the very first thing that came out of his mouth was, I cannot believe how much faster everything is. And he was a high level college player. And he was just saying, he's like, I can't believe how much faster everything is. Like, I feel like I'm struggling to keep up every single night. And so my question is, what do you think? And what do you think is the difference? And it could be that between a high level college player, a G League player, and an NBA player.
Oh, that's a really good question. I think there's transferable pieces to all that. I think that what guys do in the NBA level, I think you can do in the college level if you can think the game quick enough, and some of that is studying it. Some of that is feel, right? Some guys sometimes will never have it. Some guys will. I think the best example, and Coach Clifford says this all the time, so I'm going to use it. I think it's a really good way to answer this question. Like a college player, you have to rep things like this for a practice, right? Like you have to spend your entire practice on one thing or two things. A G League team, you can usually get through a couple of different areas and they start to feel comfortable with it. And then they start to understand it and they pick it up, and then you can move on to the next thing, right? An NBA player, because practice time, even in the G League and the NBA, is so limited. An NBA level guy, you can show them one time on film and they can go out on the court and do it the next night. And I think that's the biggest layer of just being able to watch stuff on film, take it in, digest it, and then the next night or later that same night, go out and do it. Because there's a lot of nights or a lot of days you don't practice in the NBA because there's so many games. So the film to court adaptation of that, and then I think just the amount of reps it takes for guys to really understand what they're doing. I think those are probably the biggest areas. NBA guys, watch it on film, no reps, maybe one rep of it, and you're good, right? G League guys, watch it on film, maybe a couple reps. You got to do it at shoot around, you're good. College guys may have to take a practice, may have to work on it all week for your game on Friday.
Yeah. And going back to what you were talking about too, with, you know, the different actions that you all run and the different concepts. I've heard Jason Kidd talk about this and other high level point guards speak on this. Do you all run actions at the beginning or have concepts that you use at the beginning of games just to see how the defense is going to guard it and then make adjustments from there?
Absolutely. I think that's the biggest piece. And, you know, it switches game to game, but you, like, even for myself, I'm going into a game every night and I'm watching, like, I have my own preparation process. I'm going into a game. I can tell you what most teams are already going to do before they do it. But one thing I always try to do very early on is out of my ATO to start the game. And then within the first couple of possessions, I'm always running an off ball action, a pick and roll action, and a DHO action. And then my ATO may be a multiple action with all of those things involved. And within like the first 3 to 4 minutes of the game, I'm telling you exactly what they're doing. And then, you know, from there, it's just picking out where your advantages are, and then understanding your team too, right? Like within one area, like your starters may be a heavy pick and roll group because you have 2 primary handlers that can navigate pick and rolls and play make and create off of that. Whereas you bring guys off the bench who are more DHO and off ball oriented. So having different packages too that you go to throughout games is important based on the personnel that you have on the floor. The other thing that I've always done, just for my sake, is I have like 3 or 4 plays that I always have in my back pocket that I'm going to sprinkle in throughout the game. And if it works, I'm putting it back in my pocket just in case it's 3 minutes to go in the fourth quarter and we need something. Because what you do tend to pick up is guys at this level are so smart that if you start running the same stuff continuity wise over and over again, they pick up on how to guard it and you've got to move on to the next thing. Because guys are guarding second side pick and roll DHO stuff all night, right? They start to pick up on it. So I mean, that's a huge piece to it. It is a chess match. It is a chess match. That's why you see a lot of coaches come out of timeouts and mix it up. They go zone out of possessions, or they blitz occasionally, or they may switch everything. And those are different things that we try to do to keep offenses off balance and steal possessions as well. Awesome. So going to the 4-round-1 stuff, again, it looks like a lot, but you know, your point guard or your primary handler is kind of the person making the decision in the spacing. So the 5 is at the rim. I have the arrows put. The 5 can be in the strong side dunker. The 5 can be in the weak side dunker, or there are opportunities to go 5 out and put the 5 in the corner. Not going to talk a ton about that today, but basically it's really on the point guard. And what it is it's passes or drives in either direction. And to me, that's what starts all of it. So that's your initial trigger, right? It could be a DHO to the corner. It could be a ball reversal to the 4, which is in this image. It could be a DHO to the 4, right? And based on what the 1 does, that's what jump starts everything else. So I think the best way to do it, and again, 4-round-1, one of the reasons a lot of NBA teams do this is because if you were to draw, right, the flat line across the rim and out, right, 45-degree spaces here, it provides more driving angles. So a lot of guys nowadays think about like the 5-out spacing, and a lot of teams run 5-out stuff, but there's more space to drive the ball when there's a big in the dunker and not on the perimeter in 5-out. So that's one reason why a lot of teams will play 4-round-1. But again, it's all dictated by the ball handler. So this is a good example of it. So these are ISO attacks for us. this is always our first option. Get to space, and if you can take your guy and you have a driving opportunity, drive it. So in this case here, spacing looks pretty good. Kobe Simmons needs to get to the corner on the left side of your screen, but our spacing looks pretty good. Big's at the rim, right? You can see all of the space Bryce McGowan has to work with. He's great off the bounce. He can get guys on his hip with his size, right? And these are the type of ISO drives that we look to take. Same thing here. Again, spacing pretty good. Kai Jones play with a little bit more pace here, right? So our handler here decides, I'm going to go play in the corner. Cool, no problem. Basic handoffs. You can already see that the DHO angle was low enough to create an advantage for our guard to get downhill, right? Our spacing is good. Again, basic basketball, right? Nothing crazy here. Same thing here. So we talk about relationships. So that last clip was a relationship between the slot guy and the corner guy, right? The next layer to this is you can play slot to slot. So in this case here, there's not a four-man. We have two of our primary guards, two of our better scoring guards in the slot positions. So what we want to do is we want to create confusion using two of our best players. So in this case here, all it is a simple, what we call drag, right? You can call it follow, we call it duo, right? You have all these different terms that NBA teams use, but it's really just a small pick and roll. So in this case here, teams are going to switch. It's very simple, but it keeps guys off balance. But you could see at the beginning of the clip the amount of space they had. Same thing here, right? Again, we're in our spacing. We send the big back to the dunker, right? It's the exact same clip we saw last time, except instead of the guard screening and slipping out, we roll our guard sometimes. And I think one of the questions you presented with me with early on is what's like one of the next layers that we're going to see moving forward. I think rolling smalls and rolling guards is really, really effective, because teams typically switch and you naturally create a pocket that you can hit, which you're going to see in this clip, right? And now your best player or one of your primary decision makers is the one playing the 1, 2, 3, 4 on 3 game here. So rolling your smalls puts your better playmakers instead of the fives who a lot of times can't catch the ball or aren't great passers, just do it with the guards, right? So that's an area that we work on. So again, good spacing. We play the slot to slot relationship. And then the next piece to it is just continuing to find like the next action, right? In this case here, Jalen Crutcher, one of our better players, has a mismatch. We end up cutting off the ball. We get bailed out with a foul. But it's creating the initial action. And then once it stops, don't let the ball quit moving. Get to the next action. Keep it moving. Stay in your spacing. Same thing here. So now we do the slot to slot. We get the screen. He attacks downhill, right? 2 guys on the ball. Nothing we can do there. So instead of just backing the ball back out, get to the next action. So he just breaks it off. We go DHO. Throw it back. Right? Those are the types of actions we're looking for. Same thing here. I pull stuff. Obviously, we run this in Charlotte a lot. Right? You can set screens for each other. You can also play what we call flash or zoom. So in this case here, Terry Rozier backs it out. Instead of Jalen McDaniel setting the screen, we play like the 2-man flash action. Same concept as a pick and roll, except it causes a little bit more confusion. Right now you're getting downhill. Same thing here, right? We did this in Summer League this year. We play flash, right? There's confusion on whether or not they're going to switch. You're at the rim. But again, all of this spacing allows us to get to these simple triggers. And a lot of this stuff is us just being able to create advantages off it and then make defenses pay because of it. Next layer to this. So you can go DHO in the corner. You can play pick and roll or flash or whatever with the slot, right? We can get into pick and rolls this way too. So instead of passing the ball or going DHO or setting screens, you can clear the slot. So in this case here, Kobe Simmons dribbles it out. That triggers our guy in the slot to clear out. And now you run the 5 into a screen. And now you got mid pick and roll action. But again, same type of thing. You're maintaining your spacing, right? Just another different action out of it. And this is all just read based. Same thing here. Ashton Hagans clears him out. We run into a mid pick and roll. And then we get to some nuances out of this as well. Anytime one of our guards has their head under the rim, we're always setting corner pin-ins to occupy the defense. So in this case here, we run into a middle pick and roll. Anthony DeRuggi right here, setting the corner pin-in to manipulate the defense. And Ashton Hagans is able to get downhill because there's not a low man because of it.
That's
right.
tough. That's
so
tough.
And guys have options and freedom to go either way. So again, handoffs to the corners, swing and follows with the slot, screen with the slots, right? You can clear the slot altogether. right? None of this has been anything crazy. It's just doing it with pace and having spacing. So same thing here, right? Now we don't want to play the pick and roll. We don't want to clear the slot. Now we want to go DHO. So you see a lot of this action nowadays, just the flip behinds, and now you're getting downhill, right? Miles Bridges, right? Last year for us, 2 years ago for us, fantastic at this, because most typical teams are going to put bigger guys on him. And this is just really tough to guard, these handoffs. Do you switch it? Do you try to get through? Right? This stuff is just really difficult to guard. And it's putting pressure on the defense. Same thing here. Melo Ball is great at this. You put pressure on the rim, you flip it back. Look where the defense is at because of Melo's paint pressure, right? Defense shrinks, you flip it back. Good shot for a shooter. But again, all of this is out of our 4-round-1 spacing. And these are all things that aren't called. These are things that are just triggered. Okay. Now we talk about getting to the next action out of it. So we go DHO, they handle it. We don't like it. Okay. We have tons of options here. The next thing that makes sense, go play with the corner guy. So now you go from a slot to slot relationship to a slot to corner relationship. Now you're going DHO, right? Xavier Sneed's able to get downhill with space. Second and third side again, handoff. Don't like it. Handoff. Throw it back. Now we get to the next layer, which is either our flash game at the elbow with bigs, which you see a lot of teams doing now, or a step-up pick and roll. So anytime the ball moves slot to slot and the big is in the receiving dunker, it triggers them to step up. So that's our trigger there. So you run the DHO, you don't like it. You get the second DHO, you don't like it. You push it back across. You swing it slot to slot. The big is in that dunker. Now you're playing step up pick and roll. Now you're playing the pick and roll game.
The
and
ball movement is sexy.
We drill, drive, kick, swing until it's over. So one of the concepts in driving the ball in our flow is you never drive the drive. So if you drive the ball to the paint and kick it, you're either shooting it or passing it. Because if you drive it and kick it and then drive it again, it's not giving the guy who drove it initially a chance to respace. So we very rarely will ever drive the drive. It's always drive, kick, swing. So again, here you put 2 on the ball, pocket, and then you're playing the rotation game. They cover the first rotation. Very rarely can teams ever get to the second rotation. So that's just something, ball movement, pace, all of this we're working on. So again, you got the DHOs, the second side stuff. Now, instead of doing handoffs or screens, you just swing the ball, and now you can go play DHO on the second side, right? Basic stuff, downhill. And it's just getting guys comfortable with basic triggers on this, right? Big relocates, we swing slot to slot. Here comes our step up pick and roll. Our spacing, our picture here looks great. Same thing, downhill. And now we talk about the paint and rim decisions. We just talked about it, right? You have 4 guys in the paint. Dallas is a heavy pull team. You know the weak side is always going to be open. So again, making the right decisions, making the right reads, seeing what the defense gives you. Same thing here, another slot corner relationship. So now you can start to blend things, right? It's not always just a DHO. It's not always just a swing. It's not always just like a Nova or a handoff, right? Now you can start mixing them. So now you swing it second side, you play the corner and slot relationship, and now he swings it back, and now those 2 guys play together. Right? It's all these different types of relationships and how they can work. So now you set the screen, right? You roll, there's confusion at the point of the screen. Now you kick it, they rotate, always make the extra pass. DHO, Toronto's aggressive, they swing it back. We follow. Mark Williams finds himself too high in this situation, but he turns it into a flare screen. Again, this is like the be creative stuff, right? It's not perfect, but there's like creativity to it. It opens up Siakam, makes him make an extra decision, wide open shot.
Yeah, it's great creativity and understanding of the game to do something like that.
For sure. And some of it is like some of it looks really good on film. Some of it is like Mark just anticipated the play too early, right? But it works, right? Yeah. And sometimes you got to have that. But then the next day you show it on film. Mark, you were at the elbow. Has this happened? It turned into a flare screen. This is fantastic. Now we can add that to our bag. They've seen it, right?
It helps when you have an astronaut like Mark on the court too. Mark's a really smart dude.
He absolutely is. And he thinks the game at a high level. So then the next level to this, again, you talk about the relationships. So this is where the role playing comes into play, right? So for instance, on this, Tyshawn Alexander, primary handler. Jalen Crutcher receives the ball in the slot, primary handler. Xavier Sneed, more of a hybrid, right? Can do a little bit of both. So now instead of just going to play DHO, we're going to play out of the corner in a different way for X to create action. So now the ball swings to the slot. Now instead of playing the DHO, now he becomes the action creator with a screen. So he sets the screen. We throw it over the top. Our big relocates. 2 on the ball, layup. Corner creativity again, right? We just saw Xavier Sneed play step up out of the corner. Cool, no problem. If you want to play flash, you can do that too. So instead of setting the screen, now Kobe hits Xavier Sneed out of the corner. Now this is a handback. Now you're trying to get downhill. These 2-man flash games are the toughest actions, in my opinion, to guard. You don't know if it's a pick and roll. You don't know if it's a DHO. Teams struggle to build concepts on how to defend it. It causes a lot of confusion. So in this case here, they do a good job of walling it up. What do we always say? Get to the next action. Kobe gets to the corner. Our spacing is still good. Now X swings and follows. Now it's a slip out. Now he's downhill. All of these 2-man relationships are just ways you get to the next action. Jalen Sims steps up out of the corner, primary handler. Again, baseline drive, big relocation, layup. And again, this stuff isn't crazy. It's just creating confusion at the point of the screen, creating advantages and maintaining spacing, and then making the appropriate decisions. Next layer to this, again, if you want to get creative, we did this a little bit as well. We started putting the 5-man on the slot. And instead of having the big man in the dunker like we always do, we'd put a guard down there. Still works the same way. Concepts are still the same. You go handoff with the big, nothing. Throw it back, boom. Instead of the big playing step up pick and roll now it's a guard action. Slip out, you cut the stunt, wide open 3. So you can, like, we talk about the interchangeable pieces to this, right? Guys can play anywhere. It's just an understanding of what your role is in that position and what your options are. Swing it back, guard to guard, slip out, weak side cut.
And the thing that I love about that too is that when you put guards in those positions, the guards that are guarding in that position, they don't usually guard there.
Yeah.
So, it's a foreign concept to them to how to guard in that position. And even when you're facing against zones, like a lot of the times you'll see teams put their biggest man in the middle of the zone. But then when you get them the ball, like I used to be excited as a coach. I'm like, all right, cool. They're going to do that. You throw the ball there and he turns around. You're like, all right, you can't score from there. Like, thank you. Thank you for helping us out there. But when you throw your best scorer right there into the middle of that zone, it puts the defense in a world of shit because now they have to actually guard that man. And you have an automatic paint touch, which makes that defense collapse.
Once you get the first paint touch, like we call it starting the carousel. It's just guys are in rotations. And the worst thing you can do is once you get to the paint, and if you have to kick it out and guys are in rotations, is stop the ball. And we call it grenades, right? You don't want to have a grenade. So the ball has to keep moving. Even if your spacing gets messed up, even if guys aren't in the necessary positions they need to be in, ball movement, pace, action creation trumps everything. And you can find a way to fix your spacing as the possession goes. The ball just can't stop.
Yep.
It just can't stop. That's the biggest piece. So last couple things in this 4-round 1 stuff. This was something we didn't do a ton of in Greensboro based on personnel, but we did it with Miles and PJ and Charlotte, is the big, small pick and rolls. So having a small set for a big is you talk about putting guards in positions they're not used to, right? These are situations where you don't want to put guards onto guys like Miles Bridges. So again, your 4-round 1 with this spacing, right? In this case here, we try to pick on matchups with this Cleveland thing. You're trying to pick on Garland because of his size, right? So in this case here, you have Miles Bridges handling in a pick and roll. You have Terry Rozier setting for him, right? Garland doesn't want to switch onto Miles. If Garland switches onto Miles, it's over. Miles is going to put his shoulder into his chest. It's a layup. So there's confusion at the point of the screen, right? Now you're getting downhill. And then we talk about rim decisions. You bring 2 to the ball. Jared Allen's a rim protector. You're up in the air. You bring 2 to the rim. And then because our spacing is so good, Miles knows there's going to be somebody in that corner he can throw it to.
And so to be clear, your bull series, that's a small to a big screen?
That is correct.
Okay.
Yeah. Yep. Bull series. So again, same thing here, right? Schroeder, you're putting smalls in the action. Now there's 2 on the ball. Now you get the throwbacks out of slip outs. These are all just ways to create advantages with if you have a bigger wing, if you have a bigger guy that you feel like you can take advantage of in some of these situations, right? This is a good way to do that. And then it's, again, picking on matchups, right? Like, we don't want to go, at Derrick Jones or whoever this is, they switch, right? Cool, no problem. Now we tight curl out, right? There's just the creativity of finding confusion here. And again, it's just about making the right reads, finding ways to get to the paint. I think this is the last one, right? You can roll, same thing. Screen. Now we roll the small. Again, that creates an advantage for us, right? And then a lot of this is like Miles just being comfortable and playing in this. So he doesn't like it. Cool, no problem. You don't have to attack if nothing's there. Now you go play DHO, right? Now you're getting downhill. So the concepts fit with one another. You can use multiple concepts within different things, right? And it's just piecing them together, finding ways to get to the next action, which again is based on being organized, based on being in your spacing, and having just a foundational understanding of how things are going. Does anybody have any questions? I feel like I'm doing all the talking here, besides the two of us.
From my experience, what I've learned is when you aren't getting any questions, that means you're crushing your presentation and you're taking all the questions out of people.
Well, I hope that's the case. But yeah, if anybody has any questions, any thoughts, things that you could think of that we could do better, things that we could, all of that stuff is important.
One question that came to my mind while I was watching this, when it comes to, like, for the high school and the middle school coaches that are sitting in on this masterclass, they don't have the same court, right? Like, it's much easier to space on an NBA court. And for those individuals who haven't stood on an NBA court before, it's gigantic. It's huge. So the spacing at the NBA level is a lot easier. How would they implement this into the middle school and high school level? And I guess instantly, the first thing that I think is your guys have to be able to shoot so you can pull those people away and be a threat. But is there a way to implement these concepts at the middle school and high school level? Does it translate at all?
Yeah, I think so. And I think that, there are certain things like, I don't know if you're going to have a Miles Bridges in middle school or high school, right? So the ball action may not make a ton of sense, right? But there's other ways that you can get a skilled, bigger player the ball. You look at like what Utah's doing. They play three bigs now. Like, Utah's awesome with the Jet, like doing that stuff. OKC plays a different style that feeds to that. You look at like the Lakers, and they'll run like pin downs for Anthony Davis with a small setting. So there's different ways you can get into that. Obviously the spacing does play a big piece in it, but I think the concept work in general is just basketball. And I think it translates to every level. And what I mean by that is, yes, there's more space to drive and like take guys off the bounce. But what you can still do at the college level is you can generate closeouts. And you can do that at the high school level, because so many teams pack the paint, right? They shift heavy. So it's understanding the reads of how to create closeouts. And I think what a lot of these actions do is it does allow you to do that. The slip outs create confusion, which gives you a throwback, which then creates a closeout that you can drive that gets you into the paint. And then once you get into the paint, everything to me stays the same. So I think while there are nuances of this where you see us like just going DHO to the corner and the guy being able to turn the corner and lay the ball in, you may not be able to do that as much or as frequently at the college or high school level. But what you can do is have the guy DHO, and the guy who's receiving the handoff can turn the corner, which causes the guy who's shifting at the nail to help over more. And then you get off the ball, and then that creates your closeout, which then starts the carousel. So I think it's less of the nuances of using the space to your advantage, and it's how can I generate a closeout? How can I create a closeout? So you're setting a pick and roll, and the big rolls and the weak side tags, right? Weak sides are always going to be in. It's like a foundational principle of basketball. So kick the ball to the weak side corner. Now you generate a closeout that you can drive. Now you're in the paint. Now the defense sinks even more because they're concerned. Now you get your secondary shots. So I think the concept work itself and being able to make those reads. So we'll do basic two-man drills where we'll have a guy in the slot, another guy in the other slot, and we'll drive the ball at the nail. and the guy has to read the nail defender. If he pushes back out, you drive it in, layup. If the guy stays at home, you kick it. And I think those are concepts and very foundational basic reads that you can do at the middle school, the high school, and the college level that are going to allow you to generate closeouts, which to me is what creates the advantage more than what the spacing does at the NBA level.
Absolutely. All right, we got G with a question for you. I'm gonna let G ask his question.
Love it.
How you doing, Coach? So I know both sides has pros and cons, and I always go back and forth on like which one I prefer. I realize it's multiple ways to win in basketball. But do you far as like off ball, like optimizing your team off ball, do you prefer like screening, moving, and cutting like Steve Kerr and the Warriors, or like spacing out as much as possible as D'Antoni? Because I've heard both coaches speak on it and like justify like why they don't do the other. So it's kind of like, what the world? Like,
yeah,
fascinating.
So I think my question back to you is, what does your roster tell you that you should do?
Well, the last roster I had would more so say, I would say just space it.
Sure. So you had guys that could shoot the ball.
Yeah, I had guys that could really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure. Right. Whereas if you had guys that were better drivers or guys that teams may sink off of more, then you've got to find different ways to generate pressure on the paint and the rim. And I think that's where the constant moving and the cutting can help you do that. So I think a lot of it is, I don't think there's a right or wrong answer either way. To me, the best coaching is evaluating what kind of roster you have and what your roster tells you to do. So last year we had two very strong guards, Kobe Simmons, who turned into our all-time leading scorer, played at a high level in college, just a natural scorer with the ball in his hands. And then Jalen Crutcher, who played at Dayton, shoots the ball 45% from three, was high 30% off of pick and rolls from three, right? So we had two ball-dominant guards where we felt like if we put the ball in their hands and spaced everybody else, it would be our best opportunity. Whereas this coming year, our roster may look a little bit different. Now we don't have as much shooting, or now we have guys that are a little bit better at driving closeouts, but aren't as good at, pick and roll handling. So now we're going to implement more off ball screens. Now we're going to find ways to create more cutting. We're going to find ways to offensive rebound to steal possessions, right? So I just think a lot of it is what your roster says about you. And I think that's another area we always talk about, like the difference between high school, college, and the NBA. I was in college. I love college coaches. I have nothing against them, but my biggest pet peeve is you recruit a player to come play at your school, and this is my system. This is what we've always done. Here's how you have to fit in our system. Whereas at the NBA and the G League level, you take a step back every year, you look at your roster, and you think about, what can I do to maximize the talent that I have on the floor? And I think that's the great separator. And I think college coaches that do that year to year are the ones that find the most success. It's based on personnel.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I agree with you about the college thing.
For sure. I'm not gonna speak too poorly on college, but yeah. I mean, everybody does things differently. And there's a lot of coaches that have, like you said, success a lot of different ways.
So and it's interesting that you brought that up, because the last 3 years, when I was going back and I was kind of looking at those analytics and how you all are getting your buckets, spot up jumpers are what you all get the most of. We got 26% last year, 27% the year before, and 23% of your offense those last 3 years. Going into this next season, do you think it's the concepts that you all are using that are getting that spot up jumper more times than not? Or do you think it's the personnel, or a little bit of both?
I think it's a little bit of both. I think that the concepts give guys, and that's the other part of this offense that I like, is these concepts and these spacing tools and all of this give our guys the freedom to be themselves and do what they do best on the floor. So, at this level, as great as ball movement and concepts and spacing is, you look at the teams in the NBA that win games, it's a lot of times the teams that have good players. And that's just kind of the natural piece to it. Now, I think that that's where these concepts can come into place, is how can you be creative in utilizing those guys? But then also, if you have a roster that, like you go back to like college, you may have a roster that's not as talented as some NBA teams, right? So I think that it generates both, because ultimately the game is about creating advantages and keeping advantages and then making the right decisions. Teams with better players can do less to make more, if that makes sense. That's why you watch like Boston sometimes, it's pick and rolls with Jason Tatum, right? Good players. You put your two best players in action, they find a way to make it work. Whereas you have other teams where you got to move the ball some, and you've got to find ways to generate action. And that's where, like, for me, I mean, everybody at this level is talented, but like some of those teams like Utah and Oklahoma City and us a couple years ago, in Charlotte with Coach Borrego, right? We were like second in passing, third in paint touch percentage. Like all of those numbers predicate to like guys buying into a scheme. And I think that's really important. But I do think the personnel piece has a lot to do with it as well.
No, for sure. 100%. One thing that I do have, and this is kind of off topic from, spacing and concepts and things of that nature. I'm a Philly guy. So obviously I pay attention to everything that goes on in Philadelphia, and outside of the basketball world. Trey Turner was just signed by the Phillies, $300 million man, and he's not having a great season. And he kind of got pushed down in the lineup for a little bit, had a blow up, got ejected from a game. Then he got dropped from the lineup. And the Philly crowd, I know we catch all sorts of grief about who we are as fans. The Philly crowd gave him a standing ovation, stood behind him this entire time because they could see that he was trying to get to where he was playing.
Sure.
And then he had a home run. He had a 4-game hit streak, started playing really well. They threw the no-no last night. But the question that I have for you is, getting back to it, for the athletes that you have who are going through a struggle, who went through college and they were the best player. They were in high school. They were probably the best player. Mm-hmm. How do you handle that situation where you have guys who are now coming into the G League, playing at a level that is above where everybody is now a professional? How do you support those athletes who are struggling to make that adjustment and continue playing at a high level?
Yeah, I think the most important piece to that is like helping guys understand that you're transitioning to, if it's the NBA, the single greatest basketball league in the world. So you're going to have your stretches where like things aren't going your way. And I think that happens everywhere in life, right? I don't think that's even just a sports related thing. It's like adversity reveals true character, and the way you handle that, I think, says a lot about you. From a head coaching standpoint, that's when you just dig more into like being there for them. I just think having those conversations and then putting in extra work, like there's no replacement for hard work. And when it comes to like basketball in general, so guys are missing shots, come back to the gym with them and shoot, right? And help them get through those, because you play in the G League, you play 50 plus games. In the NBA, you play 82 plus, depending on if you're a playoff team. You're not going to play well for 82 straight games. It doesn't happen. So helping guys understand that, helping guys pour into the team more, right? And helping guys understand that, you're a 3-and-D wing for us and shots aren't falling. Okay, well, what can you do on the defensive end to elevate our team? What can you do in the half court offensively for us conceptually, besides shoot the ball, to bring impact to our team, right? And then trust that, the shots are going to fall. So just continuing to instill confidence in them. If guys are taking time and time again the right shots, I'll never say anything. Like they can miss 15 shots in a row, but if they're the types of shots that are built into what we want offensively, I'm going to stand on the sidelines and clap. Like I just pouring the positivity into them, helping them understand that we have confidence in them as a staff, and letting them know that like getting through it is only a matter of time. And it's the learning that you get when you're there. A lot of guys find themselves in those moments because they may look at themselves as, this is what I do. And now you're not doing that at a high level. So then they have to find other ways to be effective. And they learn a lot about themselves in those moments. And they learn about the different areas they can help the team and bring value and raise the level of their teammates. And more times than not, the guys that stick with it are the ones that come out the other side better for it.
Absolutely. We got another question from Taylor. Taylor, you can go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question as well.
Yeah. Hey, coach. Can y'all hear me?
Yes,
Yes.
sir.
If you were hiring a video coordinator right now, what qualities would you be looking for? And then what, in kind of the same breath, what do you think Coach Borrego saw in you and all that time together that led him to want to ask you to be a coach?
Yeah, really good question. You know, the technical side of things is obviously important. You have to have at least a foundational understanding of some of the film software that we use, sports code, stuff like that. But aside from all of that, to me, it's like the willingness to work. And I know that's probably the most cliche saying in basketball, but it's probably the most important asset of a video coordinator, because you're relied on to do a lot. You're relied on to be on the court for drills and practice. You're relied on to be defending guys in player development workouts. You're relied on to provide assistance in the head coach with scouting material for upcoming games. You're relied on to troubleshoot any issues technology-wise with coaching staffs. So the work part and the availability part is the biggest thing. So I always made it a point of emphasis. When I was an assistant and head video coordinator, I was the first person to the gym, and I never left until JB left, ever. And that was just something that I did. And there were a lot of days that meant I was in the office at 6 a.m. and I wasn't leaving until late in the night. And that's okay. But I think, if JB walks into the office and I'm the first person he sees, and then he leaves the office and I'm the last person he sees, you start to build a little bit of trust and equity there, because you're committed. And I think just being able to do what they ask you to do with detail is really important too. Like if JB wants X, Y, and Z, like for him to watch, being able to present that to him in a way that he feels comfortable with, again, builds trust. And I think that building trust amongst the people you work with and you're around is the most important piece to how you get to your next job. And there's a lot of people in this business that they're in position A and they're already looking at position C, or like where they can get to next. When in reality, your next job is going to come from your discipline and ability to do the role you're in the current moment. And I think that's the most important piece that a lot of people may miss out on. So it's just being there, being available. I mean, my phone was on loud at all hours of the night. I got calls all hours of the night. Like just that stuff, like always picking up to it, to the point where like I would like take a shower some nights and I'd get out of the shower and like get ready to get into bed and I'd like see a missed call and I'd have like a pit in my stomach that I like missed his call. You know what I mean? It just like those types of things really built equity with him. And I think that's where the trust came from. And that's where, him reaching out to me and doing different things, really came from. The other thing I did was I poured myself into all the coaches and I did everything I could to make their lives easier. That was just my job. So like when I was head VC, we had Jay Hernandez, Marlon Garnett, Ron Norad was here at one point, Chad Iskey, Jay Triano. I learned all these guys' workflows. They all work differently. Like the way JB wants film presented was different than Jay Triano wanted film. And it was different than what Chad Iskey wanted. And it was different from what Ron wanted. So I learned everybody's workflow. And what that allowed me to do is make their life easier. So when Jay Triano wants to watch all the mid pick and rolls and side pick and rolls and DHOs grouped together, where Chad wants to watch the game in whole as it flows, right? I can present that stuff to them in that way to where they don't have to take the extra time to do it themselves. And I think those types of things, again, built equity and built trust. and just, again, being available and long hours, working hard, being addicted to caffeine, all of that has become a natural piece to being a video coordinator.
Appreciate it. I'm in New Orleans, and I know Baringo just got hired.
Yeah,
Pelican. So
he's an unbelievable basketball mind. He's awesome. He's great. So yeah, he'll be really good there. If guys in New Orleans can stay healthy, they've got a chance to be pretty good.
yeah, tell me about it.
How are we doing on time?
Yeah.
I
So yeah.
got
So
all kinds of stuff, so it's whatever. But
yeah. So right now, we are looking at about 2 hours. So if you want, we can go ahead and cut it kind of short right here, because I know we got to respect your time. We're going to go ahead and swap out here to the fourth quarter. I got a couple of questions for you, and we'll let you get out of here.
sure.
So we'll take a quick 60-second timeout. We're going to give you some rapid fire questions here. Just first thing that comes to your mind. And this one's not written down, but I'm going to ask you anyway, because, and just to circle back, that pizza spot in Charlotte is Inizio's. Got to check out Inizio's. Inizio's is where it's at.
I've never heard of it.
Oh man, it's the best pizza you've ever had. They fly in the water from Italy. It's phenomenal. It's great pizza.
Oh, geez.
Yeah. So first question that I have for you, the best place to go golfing in Charlotte.
Oh my gosh. I play Old Sycamore a lot.
Old Sycamore.
Yeah, so it's probably 30 minutes outside the city. If anybody knows somebody that can get me on to Quail Hollow, I would love to do that, but haven't had that opportunity yet.
Have to connect you with some of the golf coaches at Queens. They actually play out there at Quail Hollow.
Yeah,
what's your average score for golf?
Oh, I'm like low 90s, like mid 80s on a good day. I'm like, if I don't have golf, it's just basketball. So like I golf all the time in the off season just because I need something to get me away from basketball.
What's your best round?
Oh, geez. Not like great. I would say like 83 would probably be my best round.
So I just shot my best round yesterday and it was 85. So I was the fact that you don't think 83 is great, that's a little discouraging.
well, yeah. And it depends. I was by myself, so you know how those rumors go.
Yeah, there you go. All right. So first thing you do when you wake up in the morning.
This is the first thing that came to mind. I take my vitamins and I make coffee. Like and make my bed and then I'm out. I'm really good. I live like a block from the arena. So like I'm really efficient at like if I want to be at the office at 6:15, like I can get out of bed at like 5:58. Like I've got it, it's clockwork. So yeah, I have my little routine, but it's always take my vitamins, brush my teeth, make my bed, off I go.
That's what's up. If you could coach any player, who would it be?
Any player.
Past or present? Past or present?
Oh my gosh. You know what? I just started watching again. This is rapid fire. So Steph Curry to me would be one. I think, Michael Jordan would obviously be one. He was, the owner of the team and an idol. Reggie Miller. I know I'm picking a bunch of names. I'm going to choose one. Larry Bird. And it's because I'm from India. It's because I'm from Indiana.
Yep, Indiana connection.
I just started watching the Winning Time series on HBO with the Magic Johnson and Larry Bird dynamic. So I'm kind of in that era right now. So I'd say Larry Bird or Steph would obviously he'd be a fun one to run action for.
There you go. Pre-game ritual. Do you have a pre-game ritual?
My first year, our assistant GM, because I was super nervous, the first couple of games I coached, she used to come into my office and we used to play chess. And just as a way to kind of think, but take your mind off. So I don't really have a pregame ritual though. I'm sitting in my office and I have my routine, but not anything crazy. I'm watching film, I'm finalizing ATOs, talking through matchups. I don't really have anything.